Hello, this is a worship choir tutorial for the song This Is Amazing Grace by Phil Wickham, based on the recording from his album The Ascension. This arrangement is available at centeredworship.com, where you can get a copy of this sheet music for yourself or for your choir if you so desire. Alright, as we go through this, I want to take it section by section, go over some interpretive suggestions for each section, get you into the mind of the arranger a little bit. And I also want to go over some potential trouble spots and also provide some creative alterations that you might be able to utilize at some point. Before I go section by section, though, let me first look at some potential struggle spots that when your choir looking at this for the first time might need a little extra attention on. The verses are straightforward. When you get to the choir, or the chorus, that's where you might find the first trouble spot, and I'll let you see this up close. Right here, the choir does an echo part on the chorus, and the rhythms of that, you've got dotted eighth note rhythms, can be tricky for somebody who's not used to singing those. This is amazing grace, amazing grace, unfailing love, unfailing love. So that might present a challenge, especially because getting those rhythms tight is so important to interpreting this correctly, and really maximizing the effect of that echo. So I would suggest, or at least give you the heads up, that might be your biggest trouble spot. I can give you a couple suggestions, maybe they're helpful to you, on maybe some ways of breaking it down mentally. My experience is that the most difficult part in getting complex rhythms is just wrapping your head around it, not so much executing it. So, dotted eighth note rhythms, and it's true of this one, typically manifest themselves in a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 format, which is a very satisfying rhythm. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2, like that. This is amazing grace. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. You might have your choir break that down. You can have a person. You can do it as a choir director. You can have the choir itself do it. Break down those 16th notes so they're hearing that subdivision. Amazing grace, like that. Depending on your choir, you can figure out the best way to do that. That's probably, for me, the easiest way for me to wrap my head around it, and the approach that I take when I'm dealing with a student who's struggling with it. Alright, let's go back to the beginning, take it section by section. Both verses are the same arrangement-wise. The first half of each verse is just sung in unison. The second half is sung in parts. Now, it's, I think, intuitive to think that once we move into parts, it should be louder, should be fuller, should be bolder, it should cut through more, and it'll definitely be fuller, that's for sure. But in the verses, because there's such a contrast in energy and dynamics in the original recording between the chorus and the verse, you want to, in order to provide musical interest, you want to maximize that. You want to match that in the choir. So these parts are not intended, that's why there's no dynamic change written in, to be a kind of lush, warm sound rather than a robust, full sound that kind of overtakes everybody. So as you're working with your choir, make sure that their overall dynamic doesn't change moving from unison to the parts. But then when you get to the choir, or why do I keep saying that? When you get to the chorus and you have the parts there's accent marks here and a forte dynamic. So there's the choir's chance to really belt it out and give it everything they've got. I will say, to really make this pop, you might even rehearse with the choir staccato accents, and make sure that they're pronouncing their consonants really clearly. Amazing grace. Let those consonants add a kind of percussive sound to it. They might even add a little bit of a separation in sound in between each of those syllables. Amazing grace. You can certainly rehearse it that way in order to work on a more forceful attack. When you get to the word cross here, moving into this held note, and be set free, then you want to open up the sound so that you're not getting as much of a percussive sound. You would bear my cross, be set free. And those are kind of melismatic passages where, you know, they're hanging on to one word, one vowel sound while the notes are moving, and so those should contrast with the more choppy phrases. I was going to say something else. Oh, the other important thing here with this style of singing are the entrances and the cutoffs. Super important. Your choir should know exactly where beat 2 is to come in and exactly where beat 2 is to come out. If you're actually standing in front of them directing them while they're singing, make sure that they're following your cues exactly and you're nailing those cues. Nothing would make this sound sloppier and lose its effect more than a sloppy attack and decay. So just a suggestion for you. The bridge, this is the last section here that I'll go over with you. The bridge here is just ooze that the choirs hold, kind of like a synth pad sound or a string patch. That's kind of the role the choir is playing here. I put a piano dynamic. I would not want the choir to get lost. I would want them to be heard, even though they're definitely a background sound. If I were working with the choir, I'd still want them to be heard. So if they're singing with like a full band and it's easy for them to get lost in the mix, then turn that piano into a mezzo forte. Don't let them cover over the vocalists who are singing the melody, but definitely let them be heard, because that's a beautiful part when you hear the choir doing that. And then when they switch to Oz here, it's just really powerful, I think. I think it's really moving effect. Alright, thank you for watching. Again, if you want this sheet music for yourself or for your choir, it's available at centeredworship.com.